What makes you confident about the sustainability of Pronto?
There's dignity in every work. Every job is real work. Every worker should be treated with dignity and have that. When people have the backing of a company, then people will treat them with more respect.
What made you decide that 2024 is the right time that you want to come up with Pronto?
I was in mental pain every day that I wasn't working on this.
One founder that you really admire.
I think Ambani. Now, data's cheaper in India than I think in almost any other country. Ambani actually enabled Pronto to be built, and I think that is incredible. You have to be driven by the vision itself.
So what's your next big goal?
Our next big goal, our goal is
Anjali Sardana. Welcome to the AGOG Show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So she's the one who has founded Pronto. Okay. There's one thing which is like a ritual on this set where we asked our guests about their childhood. So before we start the conversation, let me know and let our viewers know, what was your childhood like? Were you a rebellious kid? Were you very quiet? Or were you always focused on that I want to do something big in life?
I was certainly not a quiet child. I was probably, my parents had I give my parents a tough time.
Okay.
I think I got in trouble at school on a near daily basis. And so my parents made very frequent trips to school to meet with the principals. I think I have never been someone who's great at following the rules.
Okay.
Always kind of marching to the beat of my own drum.
Right.
And I think that thread has carried through even now as an adult. I'm not someone who necessarily plays by the rules. I think the rules are, a construct, right?
Okay.
And they don't always necessarily have to be true. And one can play outside of them and kind of reshape the rules to them. And that was always the ethos that I had. And so that did not make me an easy child to be parenting.
Okay. So does that freedom the employees of Pronto do they also get, that there are no rules?
Well, I think I give people a lot of ownership, which is to
Right.
say, you're given a goal and you get there however you get there. And I'm not prescribing someone to do things in a certain way.
Right.
Like if you're given a problem statement and your job is just to figure out the best way to solve it.
That's great. So you were growing up in Virginia, right? And
Outside DC.
was there a defining moment or experience in your life which has somehow shaped you who you are today, or you as a leader also?
So in college, I was interning at the university's endowment, and the intern program there, I think, was extremely formative for me.
Okay.
And so I remember my third year, I was the fourth year students kind of that we were responsible for hiring, the first year that would come in,
Right.
and the fourth years kind of went to AWOL and kind of disappeared, and it was left where basically no one had taken charge, and someone had to do something, else nothing was going to happen. And I think that was very formative for me
Right.
as I kind of stepped up then, and it showed me oh, actually, this is I do like kind of leading these things, and I do like when there isn't a lot of clarity and being able
Right.
to kind of forge a path there. So I think that's pretty late in life. I was 19, 20 when that happened. Earlier in life, I don't know if there was a specific defining moment. I think I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and kind of making your own way was always something that
Right.
I knew was my path as well.
All right. So there's also one thing I wanted to ask. So somewhere while doing this research for this podcast, we read that you saw your mom juggling through work and the chaos at home. What was that situation? How do you realize that, okay, my mom is going through something and I want to solve it? Was the thought seeded in your mind then and there, or how was it?
I think it was always something that had bothered me. I didn't know necessarily that this was going to be, exactly what I was going to spend my life working on. I can't say from age 5 I knew that, but it had always struck me that it was very difficult on my mom.
Right.
There were 3 young kids. For a period of time, my dad was doing a startup in Silicon Valley, and so he wasn't home, and my mom was having to juggle this on her own. And even then, my mom went back to work, within 2 weeks of when I was born, and
Right.
same for my brother, who is 2 years older than me. And so it was always very tough on her. She was working, and she has her own business. She's a doctor and has her own practice. And so she would work, she'd come home from work at 10 p.m. at night, right? And so it was always very difficult for her and very stressful. And I always felt very bad that she was going through that. And I also was not making things easier. My brothers and I were total menaces and to the house help we had. And I think as I got older, I realized, I'm going to be going through the same thing as well. Not only did I see her go through this, in the future I'll be a mom as well, and this is going to be a problem that I'm going to face as well. And I realized, there's millions of women out there that are also facing this, and this is a problem that needs to be tackled. And I think I think there were many things that led to this, my realization that this was a problem I want to tackle. Another thing was just I'm someone who's very bothered by inefficiencies. So when I see things being done in a way that isn't the most efficient or the best way, and I see systems that are broken, I have this urge, or I actually get very irritated if I see that it's being done, or things just aren't working. And so I that plus I always had an interest in labor markets, and so I think the markets in general always interested me, but to add a layer of human psychology essentially to it, which is what the labor markets are, and labor markets tie in with so much of politics and the economy, that was something I was always interested in. And so kind of labor market inefficiencies happen to be the intersection there. And that was really what struck me about this problem, because a lot of times with market inefficiencies, one stakeholder benefits, right, from the inefficiency. They're able to exploit it and get benefit from that. In this labor market inefficiency, no one is benefiting. Neither the consumer nor the workers are getting any sort of benefit. And so it was truly a broken market, right? There isn't even an incentive for it to be inefficient, right? A lot of times with inefficient markets, there's one party that is very incentivized to keep it inefficient. But this is not the case here. And so I think there was a real opportunity to build a win-win business here. And so I think that's what really, in addition to kind of the problem statement itself attracting me, I realized that this was truly the most broken market. And I think for me, the more compelling side of it, yes, as a consumer, it's very bothersome and very difficult, for this to get house help, and was what initially, it tipped me off that there was even a problem here. But I think when you speak to workers and understand, their pain of the inefficiency of, not being able to get a stable income, not being able to get, full employment, so always struggling with income instability, always struggling with underemployment or unemployment, and really disenfranchisement, that's when I knew, okay, this truly was the problem to solve, and would be a really high impact way to spend my life, right? I think if I start a B2B SaaS company, right? I mean, sure, some maybe salesperson or account rep's life is 5% easier, but when you die at 100, how many people's lives have you actually impacted? Or has the world changed in the way it works? No, frankly, with a B2B SaaS company. And I thought, this was a problem statement that was so vast, and was a way that, when I die, I know that, okay, there was some change in the way the world works because of the work I did.
Right. So it's I think it's not wrong to say that you get so irritated by a problem that you end up solving it.
Yes. Yeah.
For those who don't know, Pronto is basically an app which is like a quick commerce. If you can nowadays, it's very easy to order a detergent and it will reach your place in 10 minutes. But if you need somebody to wash your clothes, that can also happen in 10 minutes, and that thanks to Pronto. So firstly, the name Pronto, it sounds bold. It's very creative. And where does this name come from? What was the name? This was the first name that came to your mind, or what is the meaning of it? How does it come to
definitely
existence?
is not. We struggled for a long time on the name. We ran pilots in December, January, February under a different name. In fact, it's the name of our private limited still. But we always knew that was a throwaway name. We were never going to use that. I think I went through many different iterations of what the name could have been, and my mom vetoed most of them. And then Pronto came about. I was texting with my best friend from college, and we were trying to come up with a name. And I was like, okay, just come up with a name right now. And he just said Pronto. And that was, and then I was like, I knew that was it. As soon as he said it, I knew that's what we're going with. So,
it doesn't mean anything.
No, Pronto is a Spanish word.
Okay.
Pronto means quick, essentially.
Okay.
I need this pronto. I need this right away.
Right.
And so it was a perfect name. I realize that a lot of people here don't realize that Pronto is a word that means something.
Why exactly now, what made you decide that 2024 is the right time that you want to come up with Pronto? Was it pre-planned, or was it like, okay, now I have the name, now I have everything in place, let's just do this? Or there's a strategy behind getting started with Pronto in 2024?
Yeah. So I originally came up with, I knew from like December 2023
Right.
that this was the problem that I was going to solve, right? And I knew like, okay, I want to work on this. And I honestly came up with, in like around Jan 2024 is when I came up with
Hmm.
the business model that exists today. And for a while, I kind of tabled it. I mean, I was still in college. I graduated college in May 2024.
Hmm.
And I was working this other internship in from like February through July in 2024. And it was very difficult because I was in like mental pain every day that I wasn't working on this, right? So it
Right.
was like my dream internship, but every day I would go there and I was like, this is a deeply wrong use of my time, right? And then over time it built up where like I couldn't sleep at night because I was thinking about how I wasn't building this, and you know I couldn't eat because my stomach hurt because I was thinking about how I wasn't building this, and I got to the point where like my actual quality of life had been degraded because I wasn't building this. So when people ask me why I started Pronto, I say it's because I couldn't live without starting Pronto. Like I genuinely couldn't live.
Right.
And so I started working on it after I graduated in May. And so around like June, July is when we first started working on it. And then we ran pilots December, January,
Hmm.
February, learned a lot of hard lessons. And then in the beginning of February, we raised the first round.
Okay, so initially, when everything was sorted, what were the first few steps that you took to basically validate your idea, basically validate that whatever you have planned, whatever you are going to do, it's gonna work? Were there any? Because I'm asking you this because the startup culture is quite a thing in India right now, and a lot of people, a lot of very young people are planning to come up with their own startups. So I want to lead this conversation in a way so that if anyone who is planning to start a business or planning to start a startup like yours, so they should get some learning out of it. So when initially everything was sorted, when you were ready to get into the market, what was there something that you did to validate your idea, to validate your startup?
Yeah, I mean, we launched as Pronto on April 1st,
Right.
2025. But, you know, there had been many like months of lead up to that.
Hmm.
And my advice to anyone is you'll see this common refrain on Twitter, but you can just do things. You
Right.
can, in fact, just do
Right.
things, and you should just start doing things.
Hmm.
And what we did is we just started, right? And so, during the pilots, we were operating the business out of a park in Sector
Right.
56, and near
Okay.
the park near the Huda Market in Sector
Right.
56 is where we started. And we had three Pronto professionals. Well, we weren't even Pronto then. We had three professionals, and I had built the app with Cursor. I've never written a line of code in my life. I built the app, put it on the App Store, all with Cursor, and we just did things. And
Right.
I think we learned a lot of lessons from that because we had no idea what we were doing. And over the course of, like December, January, February, or early Feb, we learned a lot of the lessons that we incorporated when we kind of reformed as Pronto. And so I think you can validate your idea by even in an operations business by like you have the idea of an MVP, right? And people normally think of that in sort of like the product company sense and like a software company. But you
Right.
can have an MVP of an operations business as well, right? You can just start doing things and you'll learn a lot of lessons from those initial customer feedback. You'll always learn lessons from customer feedback, but we iterated very, very fast on everything that we would hear, right? And so, like, one or two customers would tell us something, and then we would, iterate and experiment and try it, and then see what happened there. Like, the way I think about it is actually, funny enough, our business model today is strikingly similar to the one I originally came up with. But if you think about it as like a point on a linear map,
Hmm.
through the months at the park and the experimentation, we had like traversed every part of this linear landscape. And what we found is, when you find a local maxima or minima, you should keep going to find the absolute maxima and minima, or be sure that you found the actual absolute maxima and minima. But you'll never fully know everything, right? You'll never know everything. And the way I think about it is like when you decide whether you should think or do, and when you have all the information you need, then you think. But a lot of times, you do not have all the information, and therefore you should do. And you should do in order to collect information, and then you can think. And so, when you talk about validating an idea, the only way to validate it is to just do it because, your market research is never actually going to be the case, right? I think when people do market research as anything except actually doing things, they fall into this trap where they think they have all the information, but they actually don't, right?
Right.
And so you need empirical information, not just, like internet research or even talking to people. Talking to people isn't anything. You need to actually do things and then speak to real customers in order to figure things out. And so I think the way the advice I give is just start and see what happens. And there's a low cost way to start. Like we spent basically no money on the pilots. Like we spent, USD like $300 a month or something on those pilots, which is very little, right?
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, just do things.
So, if I can sort of try to sum up this, you're saying there should be, of course, strong R&D, but more than that, your hit and trial will teach you lessons.
Yeah. I
Right?
mean, R&D, if you're doing a business like ours,
Hmm.
you should do 1% R&D, 99% hit and trial.
Wow.
Or perhaps 0% R&D, 100% hit and trial, genuinely. Like there
Okay.
is no way to learn things
Right.
without doing actual
Right.
experimentation. Like
Right.
there's no point. And I think before you start a company,
Hmm.
you think I will have like this X set of problems. And then after you start it, you realize that actually I have Y set of problems.
Hmm.
And the overlap between X and Y is like very minimal. Right.
Right.
And so you will never know that unless you actually start. And I think a lot of times people psych themselves out of starting something because they think, oh, I'll have this set of problems and those are insurmountable. And it's like, actually, you should just try it. And in reality, your set of problems, those problems that you think you will have, you likely won't have them.
Right.
Or maybe you will, but it'll be in a different form. And so
Right.
like none of the problems that I thought we would have before starting are actually the problems that we have today.
So, tell me from a customer's point of view, if you have to tell somebody that what is Pronto, how does it really work, and why does it feel in a way magical for the first time when you use it? To a consumer who really doesn't know what Pronto is, how do you explain that to him? Uh-huh.
I mean, it's house help on your terms, right? And so I think the way I describe it is we do 3 different things. One is you can book us and we'll be there in 10 minutes or less,
Hmm.
or you can schedule it for any time, 24/7.
Right.
Or you can also book a recurring service. So you can book it, let's say, for 8 a.m. every day or for, you know, 7 p.m. on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays, right? And so you can choose when you want it
Hmm.
and you can choose the services that you want. So you know that you have this guarantee that, if I book for Jadoo Pocha Bartan, I know that Jadoo Pocha Bartan is going to get done. And
Right.
so, and you know that whoever shows up is going to be trained, they're going to show up on time, and
Hmm.
they're going to be like vetted and background checked so that you don't have to worry
Right.
about anything. So I'd say the key takeaway is just it's house help on your terms, hassle free.
So, I think there is a huge challenge. Basically, your app allows people to get housekeeping services in a way. There will be somebody to wash your clothes. You can book somebody to clean your floors, and so many things. But the biggest challenge with this industry, as you mentioned earlier, also that it's an unorganized chaos. And when I think from maybe a founder's point of view or from maybe a creator's point of view, that organizing is this industry, training these people is something which is very difficult. They're
Yes.
very good with their jobs. They're incredible with their jobs. But to teach them so many things and to bring them to a platform which is definitely going to benefit them, how did you make them realize? How did you make those professionals realize that Pronto is something which is benefiting them as well? And please, in the end, also explain how does Pronto benefits them?
Yeah. I mean, there's a number of things here. One is we're providing them income stability.
Right.
We're also providing them, assurance that they won't, they don't have to worry about underemployment or unemployment. There is full employment. You can choose how much you work with us, and there's
Right.
flexibility and agency in a way that you wouldn't have if working offline. If you're working offline, you work on the customer's terms, and you don't have the ability to
Hmm.
to decide when you work. Now you can decide when you work and if you want, uh, like where you work as well, right?
Right.
So I think that is a big thing. And another thing is like um, it's an unfortunate reality that a lot of times, these house help are mistreated by customers.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes. Yes.
there's really nothing they can do about it, right? Because
Right.
if if you walk out,
Mm.
then you lose your income, right?
Right.
And you don't have the luxury of doing that, right? And
Right.
you have bills to pay. And so I think one of the key things is, for the first time, these workers have someone who's willing to stand up for them, right? If something happens, Pronto will back you up. Pronto will support you.
Right.
And Pronto has ability to has actual weight versus, you as an individual not having the ability to fight back. And so I think
Right.
that's the key thing is we empower these workers with there's dignity and
Right.
and respect and power that comes with, having a formalized job. If something happens to you
Right.
at work, you actually have something, someone to back you up.
Right. And also one thing. So the challenge is that, like I mentioned, they're really good at their work. But how did you brought them to your own platform? How did you reach out to so many people?
I mean, first we have a team that works on this,
Right.
but I think a lot of this is just through referrals, right? So it's the first person who joins and takes a chance, who
Right.
then advocates for you and kind of gives testimonials.
Right.
And that was a key thing that unlocked kind of recruiting for us is we had the first few people who took a chance on us just talk to people and kind of just talk about how Pronto has transformed their life. And that was huge for us in terms of recruiting and continues to be. And really that's the key way. Referrals are the key way that we kind of bring more workers onto the platform. And
Right.
it also tells you that, partner NPS is high if people are very eager to refer their friends and family members.
Right. So one of the things, and I think it's slightly wrong because a lot of people after watching shows like Shark Tank, they really get excited about hearing the amount of money that startups get, the amount of investments startups get. And I think that's something that people really get excited about. A lot of people want to be entrepreneurs because they see the big money, they see the big numbers. So, but the reality is very much different. People like you can tell, right? So, if someone out there, how do you explain this to somebody that it's more about the idea and it's less about the money?
I mean, it's not at all about the money. The money is a resource to
Right.
build your vision. It should not be the vision, right? And it never is. Like I always think it's like I actually don't celebrate fundraisers
Right.
internally. Like now I've done 2 of them. I don't celebrate it.
Hmm.
In my mind, like the game has just begun, right? Like
Right.
that's day 0, right? And so in my mind, like there is responsibility also with raising capital, right?
Right.
I mean, like someone has like that capital has to be used in a way that's proper. I think it's um I I think if you think of fundraisers as the goal,
Right.
then you are it's the wrong way to think about things, is what
Right.
I'd say. Uh,
And
like
basically, you're chasing the money. You're not chasing
yeah,
the
the vision.
solving a
I
problem.
mean,
You don't.
you shouldn't start a company with the goal of fundraising, right?
Right.
Fundraising is like the worst. I hate fundraising. I hate
Right.
fundraisers. I hate
Right.
that I have to raise capital. But you have to be driven by the vision itself. And I fundraise because I need capital to build the vision, right?
Right.
Not because that is the vision.
Right. And also, you have raised one from, if I'm not wrong, Bain Capital Ventures and General Catalyst, Gladebrook. These are some really big names. So, what was the early stage of pitching was like? Now that you have mentioned that it's not something that you really enjoy and raising funds, but you know for the fact that you really needed to build your vision. So, what was the early stages of pitching were like for you personally and from the technical aspect of it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I love talking about Pronto. I also love talking about businesses and breaking down into nitty-gritty detail and kind of sharing my vision. And so, like, I wouldn't even describe it as pitching. I always think of them as just conversations. And
Okay.
I think both fundraisers happened relatively quickly, right? The first
Right.
one, I mean, I went from first meeting to term sheet in 3 days, and the second fundraise was also like I didn't know outbound; everyone was inbounding at that point, and so
Hmm.
it was a lot. I wouldn't say it was a particularly difficult journey to fundraise, but I think it can be tough because I got to a point where like I hated hearing myself speak because I was just saying the same things over and over and over
That's
again.
the worst thing to say
And
on a podcast,
yeah,
anyway.
no, it was like 10 meetings a day where I said the same thing.
Right.
And so I think we're very lucky and very fortunate to be partnered with like incredible firms and I'm very excited about working with these firms for a long time and specifically the partners that we work with within each firm. And so I think we're very lucky and fortunate and like kind of fundraising is a thing you have to do
Mhm.
and and you can't you must focus on it when you're doing it, right?
Right.
It's like yes, it sucks, but you have to get it right. And so I feel very fortunate. Like, yes, it was painful to do it, but in the end, it's worked out really well for us. And I'm very excited to be working with these firms.
Right. Because, see, one thing you genuinely make me forget that, because I was about to ask what is your advice for young entrepreneurs, but then I realized, okay, she is the young influencer, young entrepreneur out there. But you talk like somebody who understands business for years now, and that maturity is definitely there. If there is a young founder out there, they're going for their fundraising, what advice do you have for them?
Geez, this is tough. Um, hmm. What advice do I have?
Yeah.
I need to think about this for a second. I think there are. It's tough to give actually one advice because I think that there are different types of founder archetypes which you know investors like to see,
Mhm.
and like I am one archetype of that, or I fit into one archetype, but different founders are attractive to investors for different reasons. And I
Right.
think in the end, like the advice I would give is pick the right partners rather than just chase valuation, right?
Right.
And so I think I've seen. I also worked briefly, in venture for roughly 6 months, and then I was an investor at another firm for a bit. And like you definitely see companies that get screwed by picking the wrong partner, and so make sure you should do diligence on your investors before you take money from them. It's not just about them doing diligence on you.
So, what exactly helps you decide that this particular partner is the right partner for my startup?
You should 100% speak to founders who they've backed previously, and speak to founders. They will refer you to
Right.
founders who are in their portfolio, but don't just speak to them. You should also speak to a founder who was previously in their portfolio where the company failed.
Right.
This is very critical advice because then you will know how these investors act not just on good days but on bad days as well,
Right.
right? And do they treat like if something were to go south, how will they act? And
Right.
so I think that is super, super, super key. Is don't just speak to the people that they tell you to speak to, or suggest you speak to. You should 100% do your own digging and speak to someone who had their worst days with them on the cap table.
Basically, you have to figure out the red flags.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think um, the broader point I'd make also is that you're really partnering with a specific person or partner at the fund rather than a fund as a whole.
Right.
And so it's not enough to just do diligence on, let's say, on say the firm, but also on the specific partner who's on your deal, right? So, you know, I think within every firm, like, I mean, not within, maybe there are firms where everyone is great, but I would be shocked that, and some firms only have one partner. So obviously those ones you're just diligencing one person, but it's very easy to think, okay, well, this firm is great. Everyone says good things about them. And then you have a partner on your cap table or on your board who actually isn't great. And so like, make sure you're doing diligence on the specific person as well.
Okay. If I ask you about the green flags, if what are the some certain obvious green flags that you should look for?
Yeah, I think when you speak to founders, one is like if the company failed, make sure that like, they treated them well during that process, but also, in general, you want to talk about like, okay, does like what type of person is this person on? What type of board member is this person?
Right.
Are they a cheerleader? Are they someone who will push you and call you out if things aren't going well? Is this person, you know, someone who is shady? Like I think like you have to ask about that. The green flags I'd say are like someone who once you know the founder the or like board member archetype,
Right.
understand if that's someone you want. And then also, I think what I saw, like basically I didn't we're kind of forming the board now, but all the previous investors weren't on the board. And I had spent time with, oh, at least so two of the three people who are joining the board I'd spent quite a bit of time with before. And I knew that okay, this person actually provides really high quality advice. Is this person helpful? And I think that to me is a green flag. And this person goes out of their way to kind of push you or like out of their way to figure out, the ways to help you. And so I thought that was very important to me. And like really I just judge people on the quality of their advice. And to me it's a green flag if they're giving me like what if I think they are smart and they're giving very good advice, then
Right.
like, that to me is a green flag. And yeah.
So you have spent most of your life out of India, and now you are working here in India. You have your own startup. So the startup culture is good in India. But what are the problems that you have seen with Indian startups? What do you think that there is something, these are the things that we really need to fix?
I mean, in general, the sectors that people operate in here are different. I mean, B2C is not as big in the US, right? Like very little funding goes to B2C in the US versus here, very little funding goes to B2B, right? Like
Right.
the energy is on B2C. And so that I think fundamentally changes the types of founders and companies that you have.
Mm.
And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. That's just a function of
Yes.
macroeconomics and just differences. And so, um, yeah, I think there is also a difference in the way venture capital works here versus in the US. And I say this having raised all my capital, I guess from Western investors and or like global investors. But I think a lot of time, like the balance of capital
Mm.
and assets is different in the US versus India.
Mm.
I think that um like essentially the way I see it is, you know, the public equities market, the stock market in India is more risky because you have, the market, like kind of the expected market return, which you have in the US, plus your equity risk premium associated with the country, right? So you essentially have that, expected market return plus the country risk premium. And what that results in is public markets that actually return well, right? Like the public markets in India have good returns, right? Or like higher returns. And therefore, if you're risk capital in India and you're trying to figure out where to allocate, you can think of it kind of as like, public market or like debt is the least risky instrument. And then you go
Right.
to equity or public equities, and then you get into, the private markets, and you start with buyouts, which are, the least risky. And then like venture capital is the most risky asset, right? And so I think the fact that the public markets are more risky means that, and even debt is more risky here because you have your country again your country risk premium on top. But what that means is that less risk capital flows down to venture capital. And the venture capital that does exist, I think a lot of the investors act a little bit more like private equity in the sense that they're shooting for, you know, more consistent returns and less risky investments versus you see in the US, where in the US everything's very power law focused, right? You want one $10 billion or $100 billion outcome or $1 trillion outcome, but you don't and you don't really care if everything else goes to zero because only need one per fund. Versus in India, I think a lot of the investors I've seen, and to be fair, I've never raised capital from them, but just the from in conversations, I think a lot of them are focused more on like, I want, 10 $1 billion outcomes rather than one $10 billion outcome. And so, or like $100 billion outcome, which is a difference I've noticed. And I think that's just a function of, capital markets in India. And I think also just venture is a very nascent industry
Right.
in India. And therefore, like it was a journey in the US to get to the power law type of venture and to get to that balance of capital and assets.
Mm.
But in India, it's still on that maturity curve. And I also think like it rightly so that people act, a little bit more conservative because we haven't actually seen any of these like $100 billion outcomes yet, right? Which you see
Right.
very routinely in the US. And it's like if you no venture capitalist in India has experienced what any Stripe investor has experienced, right? And so I think that is something that, kind of colors like Flipkart and Zomato are like some of the, or Eternal now are some of the biggest outcomes. And those are kind of in the US would be like, not to say they're not amazing outcomes. I mean, they definitely are, but there are plenty of companies that have achieved that and more
Right.
in the US in very quick amounts of time. And so I think that colors how Indian venture capitalists operate because the senior people actually haven't seen the same wins that, senior US venture capitalists have experienced, and therefore they're more conservative. And actually, I think it's interesting where I think younger VCs in India do take more risk and are more likely to take bets on a risk a lot of times comes from young founders and really out there ideas and taking on really hard problems and and that's very common in the US for like senior VCs to kind of back like a really young person to take on a huge market and who they think is crazy.
So coming to the quick commerce bit. So quick commerce is something which is not very old, which is not very new to people here in India and especially the big cities. So now it has become a part of their life, and I think it would be a disaster if there's a situation where people of these cities, including me, have to live without a quick commerce. because we really want a packet of chips in 10 minutes. We really want somebody coming to our house and clean the floor maybe in next 10 minutes. How is the quick commerce in India function that in a way that you think that these are the things that you really need to be fixed, or what are the things that you really like about quick commerce of India?
Well, I am a very impatient person.
Okay.
So I'm a very frequent user of quick commerce.
Right.
Linkit was great for me because I hate waiting for anything.
Hmm.
And so I think, but there's been a behavior change really
Right.
over the last 4 to 5 years where even if you could live with
Hmm.
quick commerce without quick commerce before, now you can't, right? Your brain has been trained that everything should come in 10 minutes. And, I think a lot of people have lost the function of planning ahead. A lot of times,
Right.
like, if you're cooking dinner and you need a tomato, then you're ordering a tomato and it comes in 10 minutes. And then 10
Right.
minutes later, you realize you also needed, an onion, and then you're ordering it at that time. And so I think a lot of people I see like don't necessarily plan ahead. And I also don't plan ahead as much as I used to. When I need something, I just order it. I think just in general, I'm a very impatient person. So quick commerce has always been
Right.
very great for me.
The problem is in here in India, there are a lot of quick commerce out there. Every other brand, no matter what kind of quick commerce they are in, they have multiple competitors. But then what happens is that one fine day you see a lot of news, a lot of advertisements, a lot of marketing happening about a quick commerce. But then suddenly after a few months, they're gone. Nobody knows where they are. Of course, people who are following the news or following the startup, they might know. But then the general public, they really just people forget about it, and thus it just vanishes. What makes you confident about the sustainability of Pronto?
Yeah, I think one of the things is if you are creating a sustained behavior change,
Hmm.
A, and B, if you're solving an actually important problem in their
Right.
life, right? I think house help and issues with people's house help is something that they talk about very frequently. Right?
Right.
It's something people love to complain about. It's something that is actually top of mind because it is a basic necessity every single day versus, maybe some other forms of verticalized quick commerce. You don't necessarily, it's not a necessity, it's a luxury, right? Versus I think the difference with Pronto is like it's treated more like it's a utility in a very fast-paced urban household, right? And so I think once you become a utility, you have staying power, right? And so you don't necessarily have to remarket yourself to these people, every week or 2 weeks or a month in order to stay top of mind. You become deeply ingrained in their routine, right? In their daily routine and their weekly routine. And once you've done that and you're very much embedded within their life, like you have staying power.
Right. And let's come to the industry of, you know, specifically when it comes to the housekeepers, somebody who is coming to your house to clean the kiosk. We talked about it. There is one. What's the biggest misunderstanding about the domestic help industry in India that you have observed throughout all your research for Pronto?
So one of the interesting things is sometimes you hear people say, well, like every house help I know, the problem is like an actual lack of supply in the market, whereas in like every house help is like fully occupied. They never have time. What I found is there's 5% of house help that are kind of fully employed, right?
Okay.
Which is to say, they don't have time for extra work,
Right.
and like 95% that are actually underemployed. And the reason for this is because there's a discoverability problem. Let's say you need a house help.
Hmm.
What do? You ask the guards at your society.
Yeah.
You post on MyGate. You ask your neighbors, and they're all looking in their first degree connections, right? Do I know someone? Or maybe my house help knows someone, or I'm asking their house help, right? And so it's really like a 1 degree, maybe 2 degrees in the network. And
Right.
if you are a house help looking for work,
Right.
all you can do is maybe ask if you're working at one home or two homes, ask if they know anyone else who's looking, or ask your friends if they know anyone who's looking. So again, it's a 1 degree connection. So it's 1 degree of separation, or you only have 1 degree of visibility on either side. And
Right.
so you end up with this discoverability problem where, I as a worker can't really find the people who are looking for house help. And I as a consumer can't find them because I don't have that visibility beyond the first degree. And it's also, there are yeah, I think like the way to solve the discoverability problem is also where the nuance comes in, where people think like I think most iterations before this,
Hmm.
what was tried was just a matching platform.
Right.
And that works in the case where,
Hmm.
like if you're Uber, right? It's as long as the person gets you from point A to point B and like safely, like you don't really care about like yes, their car kind of smells, or like yes, it's a little bit dirty, but like whatever, right? It's not like a make or break. versus with us, a person's coming inside your home and performing a service for anywhere between 30 minutes to 2 hours, right?
Right.
And so if someone's coming inside your home, the bar for quality, safety, and reliability needs to be much higher, especially if you're planning your daily routine around this. The reliability needs to be high. And in terms of quality and safety, like, you need a much more managed model than just the matching platform, which I don't think people like now we see, like, we're trying it, and then a couple other players are, but before this, almost every iteration was just kind of this matching platform, and very little was done on the management. And I think the thing is, it's not just about the management in the initial onboarding phase, and then you kind of just set them loose. That doesn't really work, right? You need to have continued
Right.
management in terms of you know performance management and just operations work and logistics in order to make everything work in a sustained manner.
That actually brings me to my next question, that you have, if I'm not wrong, your company has almost trained 250 professionals in this case. Uh, what does the training process looks like? How do you, you have told me that you have figured out people, but when it comes to training them, they know their work, but then of course, bringing it in, in length with your vision, your startup and your company and the operations and the logistics, so many things. So how does the training happen actually?
Yeah, so we have a training facility and we have a team of trainers, and
Right.
there is kind of three things that are three buckets of training. One is soft skills, so that's communication with the customer. It's
Mm.
like how you speak to them, and then there's hard skills. So each of the services we offer,
Mm.
we have discrete training modules for each of those, and you have to pass on all of them before you're able to join
Mm.
the and kind of enter the workforce.
Right.
And then there's also just, like, teaching them kind of the ethos of Pronto, the tech, or like how to use the tech, and also stuff like uniform standards and like appearance standards and stuff like that. And so we have a team of trainers that works on all of that, and plus, like the e-bike training and stuff like that. So all of that happens through our training team, and then only once they pass the final exam,
Mm.
then are they kind of able to join the Pronto platform.
And what is the reaction of people? Are they genuinely keen about training, or do you get this thing? No, Didi, I don't have time for this.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we were first starting, we got a lot of people who were saying, "Well, I already know everything." But
Yeah.
then we would give them an exam, and
Right.
it turns out they didn't know everything.
Right.
And then I think people realized, like, "Oh, okay." And now I think very much we're a little bit more established, and kind of people who are looking to join Pronto are already familiar. They already have a friend who's in Pronto, and they understand what it's like. And I think now people really do understand, like, okay, the training is worth something, and
Right.
people are getting value out of it.
I must appreciate the it is still a very unorganized industry. It is still a lot of people, either they are underpaid or they are overworked. But you have somehow managed to bring at least few people to a platform where they are not underpaid, where they are respected and everything. But do you think that this industry can be organized on a much bigger scale, or do you or Pronto has a vision for that? And do you think that's possible?
Oh, absolutely. I think we have done a lot of work in order to make this scalable.
Mm.
And I think this is absolutely something that can be replicated, across the country, and in a very scaled manner. I think part of that is defining like a very robust labor supply chain, essentially, as in, like, every step of the recruiting, onboarding, training, performance management needs to be, like, very scalable in order to scale this.
Right.
But this is absolutely something that can be scaled, and I think the problems that workers have in Gurgaon is not unique, right?
Right.
Like, as in, these are problems that workers in Bombay and Pune and Bangalore and every other city have, right? And so there are nuances, definitely,
Mm.
local nuances, both on the demand side and the supply side, that one has to
Right.
work through. But it is not at all a unique problem, and I don't think and necessarily, like, this is a solution that can be applied, because of that.
So you have basically created a platform which is, urban app users elite, in a way elite of the Gurgaon or other cities. And then the same platform also caters to the people who are doing blue collar job. And I think bringing them together on a platform must have been the most difficult thing. But initially, when you really don't know how it is to be done, was this your biggest challenge, or was it always clear that okay, these are the things that I'm going to do, and these people will be on the same platform and everything will be sorted?
Well, so no one ever knows, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I wish I had known all that, but I had no idea. And I think it's actually good that you don't know, because sometimes the challenges are so enormous that it would probably scare you off of starting something if you thought it was, if you knew what you're getting yourself into. And so actually I'm probably glad that I had no idea how hard it would be. I think when we started, we had no idea. Basically, we had like genuinely no idea that we would have to build this kind of infrastructure around labor, and that like these would be the steps, and we had no idea how difficult it would be, right? And how operationally intense it would be. And I mean, we knew what we were getting ourselves into, in a sense of like, this is going to be a very operations heavy business. But I think it's like a combination of the last mile
Right.
you have with a lot of these quick commerce businesses, plus you're dealing with people, plus you're dealing
Right.
with kind of like training and performance management, and it's a services business, right? I think we had no idea, basically, that this is what we were getting ourselves into.
Do you think that one fine day, maybe that the domestic help workforce of India will also get same respect as a chef, maybe as a stylist, maybe, because end of the day they are also service providers and they genuinely deserve respect, and that is something that I've seen which is very much missing in India.
Oh,
And
100%
in
missing.
smaller cities there are other issues as well when it comes, maybe it comes to caste or whatever. But without getting into that, but still, even in the urban areas, there is this tonality, that this angst in the people, that okay, this person is serving for me and I'm not supposed to be treat them with respect. Do you think that's because I think that platforms like yours might change it, because if we're calling somebody, because there's this impression in back of our minds that this person is coming from a company, this person is
Yes.
not coming from a very small house. So that impression that which is sad basically, but then we have this impression that the person is coming from a company, so we might end up treating them with respect, and I'm sure that happens. But do you think that this will ever happen in India, where you treat domestic help with the equal respect that you treat other professionals?
I hope so. That's my vision. Um, I think absolutely there's dignity in every work,
Right.
right? There's no job that should result in every job is
Right.
is real work, right? Every job
Right.
is you know every worker should be treated with dignity, and have that. um no one should be treating them as lesser than. And so my hope is that when we formalize this
Right.
sector fully, and when people have the backing of a company, then people will treat them with more respect, and this attitude kind of goes away. I mean, you always see comments online. I get a lot of hate comments about how like this is a bad thing, because then you're treating people with respect, and then these people will demand respect, and then it's like, yes, I don't think that's a bad thing.
Hmm. So have the if I'm not even sure if there has been such incident, but if in case hypothetically if there's an incident where a service provider or a professional is mistreated, or there's in some way somebody tries to insult them or something of that sort, how does Pronto reacts?
I mean, Pronto will support our professionals in every way they need, right?
Right.
And so, God forbid something were to happen,
Mm.
we'll be there to make sure the justice is served. And so, I think like for us, um, like no one ever hears their side of the story normally,
Right.
or nobody is there to kind of stand up for them, or take action on their behalf. But
Mm.
Pronto will definitely do that. I mean, it's what they deserve.
Tell me, how big is this industry specifically, and how much do you plan to scale it up in next few years?
Yeah, I think within the next few years, we expect to be in every major market in India, in both tier 1, tier 2 cities. And I think one of the great things about this business is, if there's a pocket of demand in, let's say, a tier 4 city, if you're a quick commerce business, you then have to run like physical supplies and inventory to this place, right? So you can't actually service, one pocket of demand, right? You can't have one store in a city, because your fixed cost or I guess not fixed, but like your supply chain costs become too difficult for the unit
Right.
economics to ever work, because we don't have physical inventory, right? And we don't have the same supply chain needed.
Right.
We'll be able to service demand in pockets in every city where we see sufficient demand, and we don't have to worry about, is there enough pockets of demand in the city to be able to serve it. And so I think in terms of scale, we expect to be, very much pan India within the next few years.
So there is one thing that I have observed, because we were also discussing the discoverability. is quite a challenge. It's very much difficult to discover a house help. So people end up asking their guards, or they might end up asking their colleagues that if you have somebody or somebody knows somebody, that's how you get there. But when it comes to the negotiation, when it comes to the salaries, Indian people are consciously a little, I won't use the word miser, but we are very much value driven. We want the maximum value out of a single penny. And the negotiations that people have with their house help, they happen over a chai. So how have you managed to give people a right price point for the services that they're getting? How did you came to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's always trial and error when you're doing pricing. And a lot of what we did, this is where actually the market research came in, where we figured out how much are people paying. And I think one of the interesting things about this market is like, it's not like, you and I are neighbors and we're getting the same services from our house help and then we're paying the same thing, right? It's a very inefficient labor market. And so there isn't actually parity in how much people are paying, right? And what that means is, you can figure out kind of on average what people are paying and then price based on that. Well, there'll always be some person who's paying their house help, 800 rupees a month to work for 4 hours a day at their house or something like ridiculous. Well, I mean, maybe that's not ridiculous in other cities, but like you'll hear crazy things like that. And to that person, you're always too expensive. Though to that person's house help, you're a godsend, right? So,
Right.
I think like pricing, you need to strike a balance, and in the end, you're also providing a value add above, being an offline market, and therefore, the pricing can reflect that.
Coming to you, you are 23, you are wildly ambitious. How do you stay grounded? Because if I was 23 years old and I was somebody who had built a company like Pronto, I would have been a very difficult person to talk to. Maybe. But how do you stay grounded?
I'm very proud of what we've accomplished,
Right.
but this is still day zero, right? Like we're in the very beginning. And in my mind, we haven't accomplished even 0.1% of what we're going to. And
Right.
therefore, in my mind, like there's nothing for us to celebrate yet. Like I'm very proud of being where we are,
Right.
but we're not in a place where we should be celebrating. This is time to be heads down and building. And therefore, you know, I don't consider I don't consider myself a success, right? Like the game has just begun, right? The outcome is yet to be determined, right? The success, like Pronto, I don't consider a success story yet, right? It's page 1 of a 1,000-page book, so the story is yet to be written.
Okay. So what's your next big goal?
Our next big goal, I mean, our goal is launching in more cities and expanding across the country, right? We're laser focused on expansion right now.
So what would be that ideal situation where you think that, okay, now I can uh, open a bottle of champagne, now I can celebrate that we have reached there. What will be that position? Then how many cities do you want?
So I think my dad always kind of chides me for this, but I'm never happy, right? Nothing is ever enough for me, right? And so I think when I reach my goals, I right as I'm about to reach it, my goals will suddenly shift. And the goalposts are
Right.
always shifting for
Right.
me. And so I think I'm a person who will probably never be popping a bottle of champagne because in my mind, the game is still afoot, right? Where there's always more that we could be doing. We can always be bigger. We can always be better. And there's no end to that.
So, okay, so you're 23 years old. You have built something which is interesting. But I know for the fact that these things brings a lot of pressure into our lives. Building something is not easy. And at this age, it's well, maybe your peers are actually in their college or studying something. But how do you end up handling or managing the pressure that this industry brings to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not easy. In terms of actual like, work-life balance, I don't think I've actually found that yet, right? I sleep
Okay.
2 hours a night, right? So like I there's definitely
You
work
sleep
to,
2 hours a night.
yes.
That's it.
Yeah. It's not great for your health. I would not recommend it
Yeah.
to anyone. Don't do it. So I've yet to find the right balance.
Right.
But I think largely in my mind it's the passion for the problem and just the willpower that keeps me going in the sense of like I have to build this and like this is my mission. And
Right.
I think if you're extremely driven by your mission, then you're willing to do things and you don't kind of burn out. And that's what keeps me going. It's just like I really like the strongest desire possible, an obsession really. More than anything, it's an obsession with building this that keeps me going.
So in the beginning, also you sort of hinted and genuinely mentioned about your passion or your obsession, I would say, towards solving problems. If not Pronto, what are the other problems in India that you see that you really want to solve?
Water, 100%.
Okay.
I think it is really disheartening, the state of water in India, like the fact that most people don't have access to clean water, even in urban areas. The water cleanliness is a huge problem that I would love to solve. And if I wasn't solving this, I want to figure out some way to solve water in India.
Because still here in India, people get genuinely surprised that there are a lot of countries out there where people are directly having tap water, and we
100%.
we just cannot imagine that.
Yeah, exactly. You can drink out of a hose.
Right.
You can the water in that comes from your sink, you should be able to drink. And that's my very strong viewpoint, is you should be able to drink tap water safely. And it's very disheartening that that's not the case. And I'd love to solve that problem.
Do you think that's a problem that can be fixed?
Yes. Most other countries have solved it. Therefore, it is a solvable problem, right? It's very difficult and very huge, massive problem and very challenging problem.
Right.
But there's no reason that every other country should be able to figure it out, and India shouldn't be able to solve it. India can solve it. India will solve it. It'll take time, and it will take someone who's going to take on that challenge. But India will have clean water eventually.
Let me ask you some questions which I want real quick answers. It's not a rapid fire, but few things that quickly comes. The first thing that comes to your mind, you have to say it. Okay. Your favorite business book.
I don't read business books.
Okay. What kind of books you read?
Ben Horowitz. I mean, his book is probably what I'd say. I don't. Otherwise, yeah, I don't read business books.
Okay. What kind do you read?
Yes.
Okay. What kind of books do you like?
So there's a book. I read this actually like last year, so I don't even remember the name. But it's essentially the story of the Crusades told from like the Islamic perspective. I thought that was very interesting, because normally you read about the Crusades and learn about them from the Christian perspective.
Right.
And I thought this was very, very interesting. My favorite book, though, is Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, which is kind of an anti-war book about World War II and kind of the absurdity of war.
Right.
So that's my favorite book.
Okay. One founder that you really admire.
This is a tough one. I think Jeff Bezos.
Okay.
Reason being, he had an incredible business that was growing and very dominant.
Right.
And then he built AWS, right? Like that AWS move in my mind was brilliant. And I think like Amazon would not be what it is today if it was still just, a retail e-commerce company, right? Now AWS is a huge portion of Amazon. And I think that is like, you're building a business that will be a generational company.
For those who don't know, can you explain AWS?
AWS is Amazon Web Services. It's cloud compute.
Right.
And so a huge portion of the internet runs on AWS. A huge portion of the software that or like SaaS that you use all runs on AWS. And the Pronto app runs on AWS.
Okay.
And I don't know that Amazon would be around forever if it hadn't made that move. And now with AWS, I'm very confident that Amazon will always be around. I think that was a brilliant move. I think Ambani is an incredible founder as well. Or I don't know, I guess his dad founded the company, but still, I think he's an incredible businessman.
Right.
I think what he did with cellular data or mobile data is incredible, right? Like essentially, you had a bunch of small telecos, and they were all charging ridiculous rates for data, and he changed all that by building Geo, and then suddenly now data's cheaper in India than I think in almost any other country.
Right.
And that was incredible. That created a revolution, right? We wouldn't see quick commerce or any of these e-commerce or any mobile app companies take off if people didn't have cheaper data. Right. And so I think like Ambani actually enabled Pronto to be built by doing that, and I think that is incredible.
A lot of other industries as well.
Yes, a huge India has changed because he did that, and people had like mobile penetration was increasing, but you wouldn't see the level of kind of digital commerce and also accessibility. Like even like Pronto's workers would not be able to be like, we wouldn't be able to build Pronto without it, because our workers would not have access to mobile data if he hadn't done that, because mobile data was too expensive before.
Even the digital entertainment industry,
100%.
be it the OTT platforms, be it Instagram creators, influencers, or YouTubers for that matter, they wouldn't have existed at the scale that they exist now if it was not for the cheap data.
100%. I have so much
Right.
respect for Ambani.
What do you have any one particular habit that you thought that you have to unlearn because you wanted to start Pronto, that specifically working here in India? And if not focused on working in India, was there any habit that you had to unlearn to start focusing on your work more?
Hmm. So this is much before I started Pronto,
Mm.
but in the summer before 11th grade, so that's the second to last year of high school in the US, I deleted all social media because I realized that I looked at my screen time and I realized how much time I was spending kind of just scrolling Instagram. And it was
Right.
like shocking, right? And I thought like, okay, I want to actually like do something with my life.
Right.
And that's not going to happen if I'm spending, 3 hours a day scrolling Instagram. And so I made the decision then to delete all social media. And that was like the best possible decision I could have made. And that honestly literally unlocked hours of my life every day. And I think that compounds over time if you've unlocked that time. And I don't think I'd be able to achieve that or like achieve even I don't think we've achieved much, but like, achieve even starting Pronto if I was
Right.
still kind of scrolling Instagram for 3 hours a day.
Is there a single mantra or a single belief that you have always had in your mind that has led to you to the places that you have been to?
Yes. I think there's like fear is a construct and like your limitations are a construct. It's something that I truly believe. Like I'm someone who really enjoys doing really challenging things for the internal satisfaction of having done something challenging. But there's so many times where I thought, surely I couldn't possibly do this. Like there's no way I can do this.
Right.
But then I did it anyways. And I think that like there's like whether it's like even like learning how to drive, where I was like, there's no way I can learn how to drive. And then I
Right.
did. And we're like, though my dad, if he watches this, will say I still don't know how to drive. So um
Well, driving in Gurgaon is quite a challenge.
oh no,
That's
I can't
something.
drive in India. I've been driving in the US.
Okay.
So but my dad will watch this and say I don't know how to drive. So I've forgotten is what I'd say. I haven't driven since I left for college. But I think like even like small things like that, where you think you're not capable and then you push yourself to do it and you realize that, oh, actually I was capable and you rise to the occasion. And so that's something that's very important for me is like always kind of being pushing yourself. And my thing is like you'll never feel ready to do anything, right? Like you'll never feel like, yes, I'm like, especially if you're starting a company,
Right.
you'll never feel ready to do it. But you can just do things and then you'll rise to the occasion is my thing. And also the idea of like, fortune favors the bold, right? Like you have to take chances and you have to take big swings. And you should do that when you're young, especially. And,
Right.
you know, even if you fail, you'll have learned so much that it was worth it.
What is that one thing that India has but world doesn't, and that will that makes us stand apart, that makes us strong, that makes us who we are, and that will take us to the fortunes, to the roads that we haven't yet explored. What is that? What are those, or maybe what is that one thing that you have noticed that India has but the world doesn't?
India definitely has work ethic unlike, any other country. People here work so hard and are driven for in a way that I think, especially in Europe lacks completely. And I think that's what's going to power India, right? Like we are like, the hardest working country. And I think as we develop like that like I very strongly believe, India will become a superpower. And I think that's only possible just to do like sheer hard work.
For anyone who is listening to this and who's dreaming of something, starting of something of their own, but there's one issue that everybody faces whenever they have to take a decision in life. Sometimes there's self-doubt. There is this feeling that you think that you are underqualified. Maybe you don't know enough to start something. There are multiple reasons, multiple situations, maybe sometimes family pressure, sometimes peer pressure, sometimes something else that stops you from starting something of your own, or that stops you from taking that one decision. How do you suggest people to have a leap of faith and go towards it?
So one of my mentors told me when I was kind of in my senior year of college and telling her about this, and she was like, stop downside protecting.
Right.
Right. Like there's a tendency, especially for like very motivated, smart young people to downside
Right.
protect and take the safe choice. But show me you are your own downside protection, right? Like
Right.
if you have made it this far and you've accomplished this much and you have this great job lined up, then if you take a risk and you fail, you'll be able to get back. Because if you're able to do this once, why wouldn't you be able to do it again? Right.
Right.
And so I think that was very important for me to hear. And I think also if you've picked a problem that you are so passionate about, you will feel like there is no way to live without solving it, right? And I think that like even when like everyone will tell you, like people told me would never be able to do this. This is too difficult. Like you
Right.
can't build this.
Right.
And I think part of it is like having the passion and just say like I don't care if I fail or not. I'm going to do this anyways because I have to, and I will succeed and I will win because I believe in myself in doing it. And I think just stop downside protecting.
Right. Also, earlier you mentioned that there are people in the West or maybe in the US that uh, who believe that they could be next Google, they could be next Amazon, but you don't see that fire, that energy here in India. Uh, what do you see the possibility of the next biggest thing that will happen to the world? Maybe okay, Google is something that has changed the way we really live today, and Amazon is one of those startups that has literally changed and shaped the industry the way it is. What is the next big thing in terms of maybe tech, in terms of maybe startups that's going to happen and that will change the way we live?
The very obvious answer, and it's already changing the way we live, is AI, right?
Right.
AI is changing the way we work, the way we live, the way we consume entertainment, the entertainment that we consume. Right? And everything is changing because of AI. And I think like it's not just, a passing fad. Like the AI will be, AI will create the next Google and Amazon or Facebook, and already is on. There's a lot of companies that are already almost there, and or definitely not almost there, but on their path there. And so I think a new generation of Amazon, Google type companies will emerge, right? Just as we saw with the internet, and we saw with cloud computing and SaaS. This is, I think, a bigger revolution than even the internet was, right? Like I think so much of the world will continue to change, and we've just begun.
Okay, now you have told me so many things that are genuinely inspiring. There are so many things that you have told us which we had no idea about. Uh, One thing, if I ask you before we leave, are there any recommendations, any advice to the people who are watching you right now, to the viewers who are passionate about doing things in life in general, not maybe not just for the startups or business or the students, maybe, or any one advice that you have in general for people that helps you function?
Yeah, I would say find what you're actually passionate about, and that requires doing things. Or like I think when I was just coming out of high school, I didn't actually know what I wanted to do, and it was only through
Right.
trying a lot of different things that I figured out what I was very passionate about. And I think if you're working on something you're passionate about, then it doesn't feel like work, or like maybe it feels like work, but you're driven to keep doing it. I think I unfortunately see a lot of people who are unhappy with what they're doing. And it's because they're doing something that they aren't passionate about. And obviously there's constraints to that, right? You need
Of course.
to make a living, you need to pay bills, you need to support your family.
Right.
But I think within that constraint, um, don't just settle for doing what everyone is telling you to do. Make sure whatever you're doing is something that you actually want to do.
Right. And now they don't even have to make an excuse of household chores because Pronto will take care of it, and the people should start focusing on their work and goals.
Yeah.
This was really nice talking to you, and I think we have learned so many things. People who are watching this podcast, they will also figure out so many things through the learning and through the mistakes that we all make. Thank you so much for being on the AGOG show.
Thank you for having me.